Good.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm Natalia Burlinova, the head of creative diplomacy. Creative diplomacy team is one of the co-organizers of this panel discussion session, and I'm really very proud to be among the partners of such a wonderful conference, and I would like to thank the organizers for their hard work during organizing this process. We have actually 1 hour and a half, and here Viktoria Ivanchenko, my colleague, the editor-in-chief of the PICREADI.ru website, the website of our organization. She will be co-moderating, I would say, this discussion, because the right person to talk about soft power and exactly about Russian soft power. I'd like to say a few words about our organization. I think that we are one of the few Russian NGOs, really independent Russian NGOs, who are focusing on soft power and moreover on Russian public diplomacy system. And Russian soft power is a very tricky issue. And I know that soft power attracts a lot of experts, Russian soft power, not only Russian soft power. This is a very interesting topic to discuss, because I think that actually nobody knows what soft power is, because there are a lot of definitions, a lot of explanations, and a lot of perspectives on soft power. Today, we have 1 hour and a half to discuss this issue, and we have a rather long list of participants, so I don't want to steal your time. And I would like to give the floor to Viktoria Ivanchenko, as I said, editor-in-chief of PICREADI and visiting fellow at Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement. What is very interesting. I really didn't know that. So she will be speaking about as I understand, Russian approach to understanding of soft power. And then one by one, also I'm very proud to welcome here during the panel discussion our amazing Russian alumni. So we have a wonderful project which is called Meeting Russia Project. And we have some people here, some experts who are invited to speak today about soft power, and they are members of our alumni club. So Viktoria, the floor is yours. Please tell us a little bit more about soft power of Russia.
Thank you, Natalia. Good evening and good afternoon to everyone. As I understand, we have no more than 10 minutes, and I will try to be short because the topic of Russian soft power is quite huge, and really one of the popular, I could say, topics of discussion all over the world, because Russia is more accused of using sharp power, as you probably know the term. Well, I'm going to start my presentation with that statement that Russia doesn't have any official concept of soft power. As for example, we have foreign policy concept, strategy, but there is no official concept, and because it's not available anywhere except a very short line in this concept of foreign policy, there are a lot of, I could say, conspiracies about this, that in fact Russian government has some secret understanding of soft power. But as specialists in this topic, our organizations and some other organizations who work on these studies, in fact, we have to combine different approaches of officials and scientists and practice to understand what Russian soft power is and how it is perceived among officials and among society. I have to say that the concept of soft power has become popular in 2010s. It became one of the leading topics because of the internal domestic reforms and reforms of the organization which was responsible for Russian soft power abroad. And as well, it was also in times when big media, I could say, big media companies also was reformed and had some changes in their governance approach. And it happened from 2010 and 2013, before the Ukrainian crisis. And then the Ukrainian crisis also spurred some processes of changing the understanding of how Russia should behave among its neighbors, and also in the dimension of the whole world. I could say that there are main pillars of Russian soft power, as it is understood on the most on the official level, and among those people who work in diplomatic sphere, even if it is public diplomacy and second track diplomacy. The first pillar is culture. It is very popular to begin any discussion on soft power from the old tradition of some cultural dimension of Russian living, of Russian life. Of course, as any country has its own unique culture and understanding of the world, Russia has as well, and it really helps to disseminate its patterns, its understanding of the world order and the picture of the world, and many projects which officially influenced and which really are made by, I could say, official governments. They are focused on culture, and another pillar and topic which is the focus of Russian projects is history, and especially within the perspective of, I guess, last 10 years, it is a topic of the Second World War and preserving the historical memory. In fact, if we look at the list of projects which Russia has, for example, in the post-Soviet space, there will be a huge percentage of the topic of the Second World War, or the Great Patriotic War, as it is called in Russia. And I guess it is one of the leading topics of all such events among young generation. There is discussion if it is a right approach, of course, but anyway, it's really, we cannot deny that it's one of the most popular topics and subjects of discussion in for Russia abroad. Then another important pillar is language. I guess that this pillar of Russian soft power is most influential in the post-Soviet space, of course, because those countries are Russian-speaking countries. Recently, this has become also a subject of some conflicts or even discrimination, and language has become also a subject of preserving. I mean, that Russia is trying to preserve Russian language among Russian-speaking societies, and parallelly, Russia presents some projects which give stimulus, I could say, to foreigners to study Russian, to come to Russia to study language here, or to study Russian language in countries where people live. There are two main bodies which are concerned about this. It's Resurgent, Russian House, a new name of it, and also Russian World. It's not an ideological concept, but an organization which works on Russian language. And I guess maybe the most interesting and really perspective pillar which Russia uses and finds to be one of the most important is education. And here Russia uses this potential, I guess, from the first from the USSR times, because it has some inertia. Soviet education was really fundamental and created strong schools of, for example, physics, maths, and many other important sciences. And because of that, Soviet education and Russian education has a very strong image among post-Soviet space exactly, and also other countries, for example, in Europe or in Asia, because Russia invites many students, not only from the Russian-speaking countries, but from India, China, and other Asian countries. European students are more focused exactly on Russia or Russian foreign policy, Russian language. Meanwhile, students from Asian countries come to study some exact science, I mean, like biology, medicine, also maths, and so on. And also there is a discussion on what Russian soft power should become, and many experts, many officials say that Russia has to work on its ideas, that it should be ideas of justice, of peace in the world, of I could say absence of discrimination of other countries, of third world, for example, and also its traditions of strong diplomacy and peacekeeping as another pillar. But I guess that it still not has become a real potential. It has a potential, but it hasn't become a real pillar of Russian soft power. Also, COVID-19 pandemic helped Russia to exploit another potential, which is medicine diplomacy or vaccine diplomacy. It was aid of some equipment or tests for other countries in the beginning of the pandemic. And also now Russia exports vaccines to different countries in Europe, in Latin America, and it also helps to exploit soft power and to develop relations between countries. So this crisis in the world has given a new opportunity for Russia. And also, I think that in future we will see that science will become more stronger as more stronger instrument in this dimension of soft power, because Russia also has a big potential and inertia from the Soviet times. But still, I think because of domestic reforms in this sphere and because of lack of opportunities for foreign, for example, students and researchers to come to Russia, it has not developed as good as it could have. And probably soon, after some time after the pandemic and borders are open, we will see some new initiatives. I hope for that, because Russia really has big potential and very good, I think, opportunities for foreign students and researchers. So I tried to picture the situation with Russian soft power, and I think that we will see how those pillars are changing and reforming soon, but it also depends on official bodies, official structures, which are quite slow in its reforms in Russia, but I think that there will be some changes soon. Thank you.
Viktoria, thank you very much for your very short presentation. So now I would like Dr. Michael Lambert from Sorbonne University to speak about soft power and to announce his topic, please.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be here today. Topic of discussion today, of this short speech, let's say, will be EU soft power is dead, long live European soft power. So I will get a bit into detail for this one. Very shortly, I would like to say that the European Union has been heavily criticized for its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, highlighted by a lack of synchronization when it comes to the purchase of vaccine, and of course, the de facto disappearance of the free movement of citizens, Schengen, so-called Schengen area, for already 1 year. In my opinion, it is rather unfortunate, but the pandemic comes on top of a list of negative development in the European Union. And it goes back to almost 2 decades. The best known is, of course, Brexit, which has been a real struggle for the EU. But we could also mention the European migrant crisis, which we do not speak about, but it's still going on since 2010. And it's also combining with tricky relation when it's come to EU-Russia and EU-China, which is detrimental to the future of the European economics itself and soft power, of course. So today, while many states are interested in applying for EU membership, such as, for example, Georgia and Ukraine, the two most famous ones, I would say that it is predominantly because of the EU that represents economic opportunity, but rather less so because of the cultural and identity value the EU embodies. So, for example, right of religious minorities, sexual freedom of individual, or even the position of women in societies are often on the background of negotiation when it comes to integration nowadays. As such, we can say that the EU remains attractive from an economic point of view, but rather less so when it comes from the so-called stand of soft power, which is the subject of our discussion today. My argument is the main one, is that while the EU soft power has decreased in recent years, European soft powers, so to say, of nation states themselves, have increased, which might seem paradoxical at first sight. So to explain my argument, I will focus on the case of post-Brexit Great Britain. Since leaving the EU, London has managed to adopt a specific approach to redressing the soft power abroad, as highlighted by the US-UK free agreement, and at the same time with a partnership with Japan in 2020, which is strengthening the relationship and also the attractiveness of the UK abroad. All of this, from all of this, I would also say that the new immigration policy has been a bright success for the UK. And as of today, many people who are having a PhD, doctors and researchers are even more interested into going to the UK since the salary have increased a lot and the new policy is especially suited for them. So this is just to show that being outside of the EU in a certain way can be really positive when it comes to soft power, but it requires a really specific strategy in that case. So examples are, of course, numerous, but the Brexit has not been the end of British soft power. And on the contrary, the beginning of its strengthening abroad as it facilitates bilateral negotiation without the EU, so making it way faster. This also highlights the complexity of EU soft power, which is combined with national soft powers, and it's not a substitute to them. That's something we tend to remember and to forget in that case. And we're really having on one side the national soft power, which is combined with the EU, but the EU is no substitute in that case. So to be clear, my statement is not about the EU soft power versus nation state soft power, but about the fact that if Brussels soft power continue to fade away in the future, soft power in Europe will not disappear, but will increasingly be transferred from Brussels to individual countries, such as what has been seen in Brexit or post-Brexit UK in that case. This transfer will be a major change in the European continent, as it will accentuate the divide between sub-states that have a strong soft power, for example, France, Germany, or even new states such as, for example, Estonia. But at the same time, it could be detrimental to some other states that do not have a strong strategy when it comes to soft power, especially in Southern Europe. So to conclude this brief presentation, nation states in Europe should prepare themselves in case the EU soft power will continue to decline, as developing a soft power policy takes time and resources. We've seen that especially in the case of the UK. So prosperous countries in Europe, for example, such as Norway and Switzerland, could also explain and show a sort of know-how on how to rebuild your soft power as a nation state, which is very important because in case the EU will, let's say, decrease when it comes to soft power, European soft power itself will definitely not disappear. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Well, really short speech, and this gives us an opportunity to discuss a lot of things further. So now I would like to address to Palak Maheshwari. I apologize if I pronounce your names or surnames incorrectly, because you know this is my first time when I have a lot of panelists and speakers from Asian region, so I'm not very aware of right pronunciation of your names. So it's, I really apologize if I am wrong, but you may correct me. So now it is the topic of Buddhist soft power. It is very interesting, Buddhist soft power in atheist China.
Thank you. You pronounce it all right, it's fine. Hi everyone, I am Palak. I am a student, I'm a master's student of international relations, and I'm very happy to be part of this panel. And so my research is about atheist China's Buddhist soft power, which means like how the Chinese state is sort of appropriating Buddhism in the international order to gain some soft power goals that they've set for themselves. So China uses Buddhism as a source of its soft power, not only in Asia, but in the entire world. The Chinese Communist Party under Xi Jinping especially has tried to imbue a specific Chinese characteristic to all religions and sinicize them in a way so that the influence that these religions exude can be used to further soft power goals that the Chinese Communist Party may also have. The attempt to find out how an atheist Communist Party of China uses religion and navigates religion in a deeply spiritual society and then uses it, and especially we're going to be talking about Tibetan Buddhism in particular, to further its own soft power in the international order. Just to give everyone a historical overview of how China has treated religions in the past. So of course, we know that the Chinese Communist Party itself is atheist. I mean, if you are a member of the Chinese Communist Party, you cannot have religious affiliations. You cannot be seen taking part in religious activities, and your family members also can't. So, but this does not mean that the CCP is not interested in religion at all, or that religious activity is completely banned for all people in China. No, that's not the case. If we start from Chinese leaders since Mao Zedong was very against religion. His objective was to eradicate it, especially during the Cultural Revolution. But since then, Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao have tried to use religion, and they realized that the power they will have if they can sort of use religions to further their own goals. Hu Jintao saw state-sanctioned religion as a definitive means of promoting harmony within the country. He was the one, in fact, who set up the Buddhist Association of China, which is the supervisory authority of Buddhism within China. Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, they passively supported the growth of Buddhism because they believed that doing so would help bolster the image, will help improve the image of China's peaceful rise, support the CCP's goal of creating a harmonious society, and also maybe it helps them improve relations with Taiwan and other places in Southeast Asia, where Buddhism is an important part of people's daily lives. So to talk about the status of religion under Xi Jinping, the Constitution of China recognizes 5 religions within the country: Taoism, Catholicism, Protestantism, Islam, and of course Buddhism. Buddhism of 2 types, Tibetan and Chinese. Xi Jinping has tried to link all these religions together in a way so that he can promote the China dream that he always propagates and limit the influence of foreign powers on these religions. Of course, Taoism and Buddhism are given more preference because it's very difficult to limit the influence of foreign powers on religions like Islam and Catholicism. His regime is attempting to co-opt this influence of religion to further its own agendas in a more direct way. But this does not mean that the crackdown on religions has stopped. It has, in fact, increased in the recent years. We know about what's happening to Uyghur Muslims. Hui Muslims, Tibetan Buddhists, and Protestant Christians also, some parts of China. So when Xi Jinping issued a firm call to Sinicize Tibetan Buddhism or imbue it with characteristics in a way that serves the goals of the Chinese Communist parties, these attempts classified Buddhism into two distinct religions, which was Chinese Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism is only practiced in the Tibetan Autonomous Region, and of course by the Tibetan community in exile as well. And the CCP version, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP version, approved version, is practiced by 250 million Chinese people, and it's also the largest religion in China. Now, China wants to be seen as the leader of the Buddhist world to fulfill two objectives. Of course, it wants to attract tourism to all its sites of Buddhist pilgrimage within China. And it wants to use Buddhism as a strong mediator while dealing with Buddhist countries in Northeast and Southeast Asia. The Chinese Communist Party, to achieve these goals, it tries to discredit any influence that any outside power may have on Buddhism, on the global narrative of Buddhism, in fact. The Buddhist Association of China, which was set up by Hu Jintao, is associated with the United Front Work Department. The UFWD, the United Front Work Department, reports directly to the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, and it is responsible for taking care of the CCP's global interests and to tap into overseas Chinese communities and gain their support for CCP objectives. The CCP approved 11th Panchen Lama. So let me tell you something about the Panchen. The Dalai Lama is the highest spiritual figure within Buddhism. The Panchen Lama is the second most important leader in Buddhism. The Panchen Lama, who was appointed by the current Dalai Lama, who currently lives in exile in India, was kidnapped as a baby in China, and he has not been seen for over 25 years. The CCP approved Panchen Lama heads the Buddhist Association in China. And they have been organizing the World Buddhist Forum, which is a global congregation of Buddhist leaders and followers. The CCP wants to show the world that it approves of Buddhism by sort of organizing this huge conference every couple of years. And it also wants to, China also wants to be an integral part of Buddhism's history, which is very important because the actual integral parts of Buddhism's history lie in two very important neighbors that China have. One is, of course, Nepal, Lumbini, where the Buddha was born, and all the other sites of pilgrimage in India, Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, where the Buddha gave his sermon and where he found enlightenment. So these sites are important within South Asia, but China wants to appropriate the history to its own advantage. The Dalai Lama, who lives in exile in India, is the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, but devotion towards him is strictly forbidden, even if you are found carrying a photo of him within Tibet or China. The punishment is really, really harsh. Beijing has never, ever invited the Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, who lives in India, to any of the World Buddhist Forum meetings, despite him being one of the biggest leaders of Buddhism. China has been trying to assert its influence over foreign leaders and restrict them from officially receiving the 14th Dalai Lama, which is particularly a problematic issue for China because the 14th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, enjoys immense global popularity. He is very popular amongst world. He's one of the most famous, most well-recognized faces, especially when it comes to religious leaders in the world. China has tried to pressure the 14th Dalai Lama to spend his last days in his motherland so that they can have control on who becomes the next Dalai Lama. So for those who may not know in the audience, the Dalai Lama is a title which is given as reincarnation. So the current Dalai Lama will choose that who will be his reincarnation after he passes away. According to some latest reports, and a lot of you may have heard this, that China is stepping up with its fight with both US and India over who has legitimate authority over appointing the next Dalai Lama, because whoever appoints the next Dalai Lama will have a lot of advantage there. So on a surface level, it may seem that China's influence over the narrative of Buddhism is increasing. Many Asian countries with strong links to Buddhism like Myanmar, South Korea and Vietnam have not allowed visits by the Dalai Lama to be careful towards their relationship with Beijing. China has attempted to invest in Lumbini. China has invested in Lumbini in Nepal. And it's trying to sort of build that connection with Nepal, the Buddhist connection with Nepal, because Lumbini is one of the most important sites in Buddhism. Controlling this narrative on Buddhism, Buddhism gives China a very unique position where it can influence Buddhist populations not only within China or in Nepal, but also in India, places like Sikkim, Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh, Ladakh, Dharamshala, even countries like Bhutan. So if you control the global narrative on Buddhism, you can influence a lot of people. That is why China spends so much time on it. They can also neutralize hostile foreign forces, because if Tibetans outside Tibet Tibetans outside Tibet have connections with Tibetans within Tibet. So if the outsider Tibetans are controlled, there will be less uprisings within the Tibetan Autonomous Region. That seems to be the goal that China is going for. China has spent millions of dollars, we already said, to link its Buddhist heritage to its Belt and Road Initiative as well. These two things are very interconnected, because most of the Belt and Road Initiative is concentrated in Southeast Asia. It has moved away, but traditionally it was concentrated in Southeast Asia. And a lot of these countries are Buddhist. So China can use Buddhism as a mediator to further its Belt and Road investments. By gaining significant footing in Buddhist soft power, China expects that its BRI projects will be more wholeheartedly received, not just in these countries, but in the world. In the world at large. After using this sort of soft power, China may also try to gain support from these Buddhist-leaning countries for the Dalai Lama that they choose, instead of the Dalai Lama appointed by the religious leaders of Buddhism. The Chinese Communist Party has not factored into this equation that the Dalai Lama, the current Dalai Lama, is a really popular leader, and a lot of people will only approve of a Dalai Lama if he endorses him. So the Dalai Lama enjoys much more legitimacy than the CCP, and he has time and again pointed out that as long as Tibet remains occupied by China, he will decide to reincarnate outside of Tibet, which is an important statement that we always need to be careful of when we are talking about what China is going to do with Buddhism. So in Tibetan Buddhism, reincarnation is based on a deeply religious and spiritual practice. And if China does not take this sort of dynamic into account, they will lose legitimacy within the Buddhist populations of the world instead of gain it. So thank you. That was my presentation.
Thank you, Palak. I will, as I'm co-moderator and Natalia has some technical issues, she asked me to continue. Thank you very much for your presentation. And now we will move further. The next presentation is on Belt and Road Initiative and Chinese Soft Power by Dr. Saheli Bose from University of Calcutta, Assistant Professor. Please, can you join us?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm very glad to be part of this program and present my paper in this forum. For presenting my paper, I would like to share my screen. So please, Chair, kindly allow me to share my screen.
Yes, we see your screen.
Yes. So my presentation talks about the Belt and Road Initiative and the Chinese soft power juxtaposed images. Now, the points of discussion, I would be going I will be giving you an idea about the Belt and the Road Initiative, though it is a very preliminary information, but it is very important. Now, the Belt and the Road Initiative was announced by China in 2013. It is basically a connectivity roadmap that links the South, the Asian, African, and the European continent. It is a massive infrastructure initiative and brainchild of President Xi Jinping, comprises of an overland Silk Road and a maritime Silk Route, reviving essentially the history of 2000 years. Basically mooted with an idea to uplift the western provinces of China, which are not economically doing well, to link it to the Central Asia so that they can emerge as an hub of economic activity. When it was announced in 2013 and 14, the idea of BRI was not very clear in front of the world audience. 13 and 14 seems to be a year when there was a lot of confusion regarding BRI. Now, once it was announced, how was BRI to be seen by the world? What was the target? How big was BRI? It talked about comprising of 65 countries membership, 4.4 billion people, approximately 63% of the world population, 35% of global foreign direct investment would be figured on these routes, 40% of global merchandise trade. As it is a very known picture of the Belt and Road Initiative, the one in the brown shows the land route, and the one in the blue talks about the maritime route. So this is a very, very known picture that has been put by the Chinese in form of BRI initiative. Now, what was the official announcement about BRI from China? Vision and mission of BRI was released by the National Development Reforms Commission, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, China in 2015. The aims were put forward as an orderly and free flow of economic factors, efficient allocation of resources, and deep integration of market by enhancing connectivity of Asian, European, and African countries. The initiative would be open to all the countries and regional organizations, which would honor mutual respect and market operation to seek common prosperity. It called for policy coordination, increasing connectivity, uninterrupted trade, financial integration, and people-to-people contact. It was also seen by China as an initiative to leverage the comparative advantage of its region and open up for more interaction and cooperation internationally and at home. BRI from 2013 till now, what has exactly happened? What has been why there has been so much talk about the BRI? Now, BRI has been projected by President Xi Jinping as the project of the century. It has a huge task to make China a world power and make China a Shaokang society, which is basically a moderately prosperous society. In order to uplift the huge population of China, which lives under the poverty, this initiative would be talking about more investment, more trade, and being prominent, importantly, on the world trade. The membership has increased from barely 10 in 13 to 140 in 2021. 2 Belt and Road Forum meetings, one in 2017 and in 2019 has been held. Some countries across the globe has been the largest recipient of funds from the Chinese-led banks. Now, one thing that has happened in all these years is the enhancement of Chinese threat theory. And here, I would like to talk about, in this context, the idea of soft power. Now, you can see that there are 2 images which I have placed deliberately. One is that of a dragon and that of a panda. Now, a dragon usually is associated with threat, with harm, but whereas panda is associated with its innocuous nature, not being harmful, and in a very innocent manner. Now, soft power is basically an idea where you garner support and increase credibility in the international forum. I am quoting Nye over here, Joseph Nye, who has given the idea that the proof of power does not lie in your resources, but your ability to change the behavior of other states. So BRI has evolved as a strategy for China's engagement with the world. It has been projected as the community of common destiny, setting BRI as a measure to put forward China's soft power. Now, here also, it is essential to talk about the idea of Chinese soft power. One has to understand that the idea of soft power is a new entry into the Chinese political arena. It was in 2001 when the Chinese media industry was going global, then the idea of soft power started to emerge. 2007, we have the first white paper on foreign affairs, which highlighted the Chinese idea of soft power. 2011, in the 17th Central Committee of Chinese Communist Party, they wanted China to evolve into a cultural superpower. Now, you can understand from the words that President Xi Jinping himself says that we should increase China's soft power, give a good Chinese narrative, and better communicate China's message to the world. So this is the idea that they want to spread to the world, and BRI seems to be a very, very potent weapon. Now, what is it trying to give to the world? What is the idea that it is trying to give to the world? That we are inclusive partners of development and cooperation, hinges on public diplomacy, investing trillions in infrastructure to foster goodwill, reliable infrastructure partners. We have numerous reports across, one by World Bank, the ADB, which talks about increasing investment in the developing countries so that they can come out of their abject poverty situation. Now, and one more important thing that they wanted to point out is that they as a country is rather very keen to help others in order to build up what is called as the community of common destiny, which itself talks about the appreciation of world peace and development. In this connection, they have also opened a master degree in one of the universities, which talks about the wisdom that is behind the project of BRI. Now, why is this a juxtaposed image? Why, after all, BRI is in so much criticisms? Why there are so much discredits? Now, some call it, here I would like to talk about the realist approach, the dominant narrative that we have seen so far, that it is also related to the idea of Chinese Marshall Plan, charm offensive, salami slicing, debt trap, as we have seen in case of Sri Lanka, Hambantota, Malaysia, and also in some of the Latin American countries. Now, here I would like your attention to a survey that was done by the Asian Studies Center, which is the state of Southeast Asia 2019 survey. So this survey actually took the opinion of people who are from business background, who are from media, who are from political analysts regarding BRI. And in this report, everyone seems to acknowledge that BRI will be kind of influential, will be kind of beneficial to the region, but 70% of the population believed that they need to express caution in order to negotiate with China. There has been a spatial difference across the Southeast Asian countries. For example, Darussalam, Laos, Cambodia seems to be more positive than other countries like, for example, Malaysia. Even for that matter, in some European countries, especially in Central and East European countries, BRI seem to have made more inroad. Now, the Bruegel report, which talks about the perceptions of BRI of 130 countries. Now, here I have in front of you, snapshot of one of the pages from the Bruegel report, which talks about the country and its perception. So you can see that it moves from the negative towards the positive. As the green color, you have the positive perception, and the red one provides you the negative perception. So over here, we have the countries, what they think about, how their experiences has been about the BRI. Now, over here, we have to understand that the African countries, leave aside that of the Southeast Asian countries and the port of Hambantota, for that matter, in Sri Lanka, and the South Asian countries, which has been more or less uncomfortable. The African countries has been one of the largest recipient of BRI's credits, and 49 countries of their union has been part of this. And in 2020, African Union also came up with a trade negotiation pact, and they have signed an MOU on BRI cooperation with China. Now, probably the reason could have been that the African countries are low on investment on their infrastructure, and they need a massive investment in their infrastructure in order to make their economy grow. Given the fact that this is a pandemic situation, and we have reports from the World Bank, the IMF, which have already curtailed the world trade, which has already curtailed the GDPs across the country, we have to keep a close watch as to why and how Chinese would like to use BRI as a leverage to increase their soft power, to emerge as the credible partners. One has to see that the Chinese need to walk the talk. So with that, I would end my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Dr. Bose. It's also a very interesting topic, especially for us, as Belt and Road Initiative is a very popular discussion, by the way, in Russia and in European countries. So thank you for your insights. Now we will move to another presentation on religion as soft power, Resurgent Orthodoxy and the Modern World by Peter Flew. Please, Peter, your floor is now.
Excellent, thank you. And many thanks for the invitation to speak today. I want to speak briefly about Russian Orthodoxy and its contemporary use as a tool of soft power. The Russian state appears to position itself as a defender of Christian values and seeks to fulfill Slavophile thinking of the 19th century. To what extent can the modern Russian state use the Moscow Patriarchate as a vehicle for a new ideological Christian campaign in its diplomatic relations? I will first talk about Britain as an arena for a Russian religious mission. I will then detail an example of a concrete action taken by the Russian government to use orthodoxy to further its global image. Finally, I will highlight three key issues that impede the Russian government from forming a cohesive and successful policy for orthodox mission. Britain, from where I speak, is now a largely secular country. The national churches are culturally marginalized, and growth spots of religion largely come from migrant communities. Russia, on the other hand, has incubated a resurgent orthodoxy since the late 1980s. Church construction has spread, and pilgrimage numbers increase year on year. Religion has gone from being suppressed to being actively promoted and celebrated. The late imperial tradition of using orthodoxy as a source of national definition seems to have returned. Russian Orthodoxy has had a long presence in Britain, albeit one focused mainly on Russians living here. The first church was opened in London in 1716 and operated for many years as an embassy church in Marylebone. However, unlike their British counterparts, the Russians carried out no large-scale religious missions in their host country. Paradoxically, it was during the Soviet years that the voice of Russian Orthodoxy began to be heard in Britain, led by the efforts of Anthony Bloom. During his tenure, he transformed the Russian Church in England to a more outward-looking enterprise. He wrote erudite and lucid sermons that, although rooted in Orthodox tradition, were ecumenical in nature. The British drawn to his work tended to be those seeking a faith that was rooted in antiquity and mysticism. They felt, in the context of 70s and 80s Britain, that British churches were losing their way, dumbing down. They found Antony's traditional vision of faith refreshing and attractive. In a context where the Russian authorities defend traditional values, can Orthodoxy develop a new mission? The contemporary context is perhaps even more fruitful. Questions of culture are alive as they have never been before. Race, gender, and sexuality form daily topics on the front pages. Some feel alienated from the developing discourse on these domains. There are traditional Christians who feel abandoned by their national church. They claim it has become secularized by taking liberal positions on social justice. There are also younger people, typically young men, who use social media to make their first steps in the Christian religion. They engage with what is known among some as the online orthosphere. They find in Orthodoxy an identity that gives them meaning, support for traditional masculine ideas, and a sense of rootedness. Are these small groups of people that the Orthodox should or could attract to build an international communion? Moscow has made some efforts to use Orthodoxy to forge cultural and religious links as part of its broader campaign to position itself as a defender of Christianity. However, the best example is not in Britain, but the new Cathedral of the Holy Trinity in central Paris, which fills a plot of land near the Eiffel Tower. Paid for by the Russian state, it comprises a church and a cultural centre. However, while they built an impressive modernist church, can the project spread the image of modern Russia as a defensive bastion for traditional values and build a mission? In Britain, they are yet to attempt a project of such scale, and I would say such a project would likely find limited success for institutional, cultural, and political reasons. Firstly, as an institutional point, state attempts to promote its value through the Orthodox Church meets an initial stumbling block in the historical split between the Moscow Patriarchate and the Russian Orthodox Church abroad, Rokor, a legacy of communist rule. Both communions are represented in London, which dilutes and arguably confuses the connection with the Russian state. The state chooses to work mainly through the Moscow Patriarchate, while membership of Rokor remains just as high. Secondly, there is a profound paradox at the heart of Orthodoxy. While it preaches universality, the Church seems to be deeply wedded to its Russian identity. Beyond unique figures like Anthony Bloom, no Russian prelate in Britain has matched his ability to speak to the British. For lasting success, the Church will likely have to develop an approach less obviously based upon Russian culture and tradition. This is certainly important given the levels of suspicion about Russia in the British context. Might this undermine Russian soft power attempts if the Church become more blandly universal? Thirdly, we need to consider the abilities of a Church so unused to mission work. Getting into an Orthodox church in London and accepted in the community is incredibly difficult. I am not convinced the Church itself has the energy or the appetite. Even those within the Church hierarchy have confessed to me that the Church is not capable of mission, that corruption and shallow faith hold it back. Meanwhile, complex cultural questions such as social justice are a minefield for the Church. Any sense of a partisan position might appear fruitful in the immediate context, but lead to lasting damage as those same cultural questions are resolved or develop in one way or another. While Russia will find a willing constituency for traditional views, one should not underestimate the prevailing cultural pressure against such values in a country like modern Britain. As a method of bridge building and mission, the Church will need to carefully manage such work in such a secular context. Overcoming these challenges would require reform and close cooperation between Church and state. It would require cohesive policy objectives to carefully navigate the political, cultural, and religious sensibilities of a country like modern Britain. At present, beyond expensive church construction, the current leadership of the Russian Church and state do not appear able or willing to navigate these waters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Flu, for your presentation and your interest in the topic, because I think that even in Russia it is not widely known, probably except the figure of Metropolitan Antony. So thank you again. And now we move into the next presentation. It is the presentation on the future of India's soft power by Assistant Professor at Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Anagha Babu.
Thank you, Victoria. Since I'm not sure about the timelines that we are in, let me quickly jump on to a small expertise in Indian soft power, the Namaste diplomacy. So I welcome you to my presentation, Namaste. And let me just quickly share my screen. I hope the screen is visible. And are the slides moving?
Yes, it is visible, and you have like around 8 minutes. About time.
Okay, thank you. So I have titled my presentation "The Era of the Peacock" because peacock is peacock is the national bird of India, and we do recognize, especially in the West, they recognize peacock and elephant as symbols of the Indian foreign policy and diplomacy. So I did my thesis in the role of Indian soft power diplomacy in Indo-US relation, and that is when I clearly found out a bit more could be done on the future of the Indian soft power. I'm not going into the details of soft power because we are all experts here, I believe. And let me just quickly say that what India could do with its soft power vitals and assets. So in international arena, India is currently facing competition from China, Indonesia, Japan. South Africa, we have Africa as a competitor, and from South America, there is Brazil. India and China, after all, are the world's only major states that embody grand civilizations. India should compete for the title of soft superpower, and that India has been doing in its own pace and style, but it's high time that we change this, because according to the reports by the London consultancy Portland, it ranks India much lower than what was expected. And recently their 2020 result was also out, in which the rank has even gone down. Now, there are various reasons for this low Indian standing in the index, ranging from corruption, poverty, inequality, gender inequality, to even pollution. The global perception of India can be altered to a great extent if India emerges as an environment-friendly nation, willing to combat climate change and help other nations to do the same. The censoring and resistance of greater individual freedom has limited China's ability to apply and handle the soft power elements. And this is exactly where India can jump in. But for some reasons, which we will discuss soon, India is not able to do it on a clear line. India should learn to take advantage of the situation. And India was formed with a democratic constitution and a political structure. This is something that hugely attracts the Indian soft power with many of the Western countries who believe in democracy and the democratic peace theory. And this China is yet to overcome. India has to utilize this to augment its soft power. India has to realize its soft power sources, and the government of India should focus on building wings for cultural diplomacy, tourism diplomacy, and knowledge diplomacy. Now, Eric Ringman, he has defined 3 arenas according to which we could clearly define if the soft power is increasing or not. The capacity to reflect, the capacity to mobilize resources, the capacity for conflict resolution. And Indian scholars like Baldev Raj Nair and T.V. Paul, they have clearly said this, that many major powers naturally possess this 3 capacities, and India has to build on it. I have given a table in the side where you could see where the Indian ranking and score, how it has gone about. And in modern times, it is very important, as Shashi Tharoor has pointed out, It is not the side with a bigger army that would win, but it is the country that tells a better story that would prevail. And for this, it is very important to make branding essential. And India has not focused on this idea of branding. As you could see, the religious intolerance, the barriers of free speech, the caste conflict, visa problems, aggressive foreign policy. These are all areas that has affected the Indian soft power argumentation on a destructive scale. Now, rebranding is basically done nowadays in India through the public diplomacy division. It has slowly started improving and doing good jobs. But what essentially is needed is something very similar to this, providing cultural quota for admissions to government colleges and government jobs. In India, usually we give admission on the basis of caste systems here, and sports, the performance in sports, the performance in certain athletic events, that become a criteria to enter colleges and government jobs. So why not the criteria to enter government jobs and colleges be assessed on the basis of how much of the culture you know? For example, if someone is well versed in Sanskrit, they should be given an opportunity. Someone is well versed in classical music, classical dance. These could be framed as quotas, and the cultural quotas should be something that the Indian government should be looking at while if they want to promote Indian soft power abroad. The idea of cultural social responsibility, just like we talk about the corporate social responsibility, if that is there, then I think the new generation and the coming generation would definitely get an idea of soft power in itself. There are novice arenas through which soft power could be developed and sent across to various countries, and this could be done in such a scenario. The Information and Broadcasting Ministry, along with the Ministry of Culture and Cultural Awareness, could create art and cultural awareness campaigns for the same. Just like CESs, like the Krishi Kalyan says, or the Health and Education says, or the Swachh Bharat says, we could go ahead and promote a cultural cess, so that efforts are made on the front to improve the Indian soft power diplomacy. I'm again focusing on the part of nation branding and soft power projection, and the think tanks and the non-governmental organization could do a lot in this arena. In India, we don't have a prize as such like the Nobel Peace Prize or the Confucius Prize of China. What we have is Bharat Ratna and the Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace, which I think is not as popular as the prizes I have just mentioned. But we need to go through the propaganda of the West by definitely putting forward these awards and thinking of another awards, constituting another awards in these lines. And when educational support is given to foreign students, India should ensure that these selected members of younger generations of a country, they develop a taste for India and become ambassadors of Indian interest and policy initiations. The government should try and lure more foreign students into Indian universities. And in India, something as Indians everyone is proud of is the multilingual culture that is being followed in India. But at times it is seen that we still stick on to Hindi, and that is what when you say India, the first language that comes to mind is Hindi. It's not like that. We have almost 18 recognized regional languages, and that too needs to be promoted on the same scale. Because if it is multicultural, it would link more with people, unlike the monocultural trajectory that China is projecting. Being an influential force in the institutions and organizations of international reputation, it will have a better standing for India. India should don the image of a naysayer in many global platforms. We had been doing it for a long time. Let it be the WTO, or let it be the IMF, we have seen India as a naysayer in these platforms, but India needs to frame its no in a sugar-coated manner, I believe. This aspect of diplomacy could enhance the Indian soft power, and especially courses encouraging diplomacy and policy analysis and international relations should be promoted with government intervention towards this end. The image of a naysayer and a mediocre negotiator should be no longer a baggage to India while participating in international platforms and forums. Thank you. I hope I was able to get across my ideas since the time restraint was there. I tried to brush through the topics and I think I ran through them actually. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Babu, for your presentation on a very strategic topic about India's soft power. We are moving further, and the next speaker is Dr. Roy Jelinek, who is an assistant professor at Besa or Israel, and who is going to present the topic of institutional reception of Confucius institutes in the Arab-speaking countries at the Middle East. Do we have Roy with us? Or maybe not. Well, as I don't see, maybe our speaker is going to join a bit later, then we will move further. And I will ask Ravi Shankar Raj to speak on Buddhism as India's soft power. Ravi Shankar Raj is a research scholar at Central University of Haryana.
Good evening, everyone. So, firstly, I would like to. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good evening. So I would like to start with my presentation. So firstly, very good evening to all of you. So firstly, I would like to thank NICE for giving us a broad platform to present our views and also to PICREADI. So when we talk about Buddhism as a soft power, then there are basically two aspects in large. So one is related with China and the other aspect is related with India. So fortunately, one part has already been dealt by Palak and the other part will be dealt by me. So this will give our listeners a broad perspective at one platform. So now coming to my presentation part. So my topic for presentation, so my topic will be basically highlighting what are the steps that India has been taking to emerge as a global Buddhist leader. Now coming to my, so firstly, soft power as a concept, what it means. So we see that power as a concept has dominated the field of international relations since from its inception through mainstream theories and most prominently by realism. So for example, if we say that Morgenthau, who is considered as the father of international relations, regarded politics as struggle for power among nations. So it is believed that power in IR has traditionally been defined in relational terms. That is the ability of A to influence the behavior of B to get the outcomes one wants. So what Nai has tried that he tried to change the traditional understanding of notion of power by introducing the concept of soft power. So he basically he introduced the term soft power in his book Born to Lead: The Changing Nature of American Power in 1990. So he basically defines soft power. So I would like to quote him that the ability of a country to persuade others to do what it wants without force or coercion, and unquote. And he further says that a country's soft power can come from basically three sources. That is its culture, its political values, and its foreign policy. So if we look the case of India, then we find that Buddhism reflects all three resources. Now coming to second part, that is Buddhism, a profile. So in this section, I will just give brief profile of Buddhism, as it will be very difficult to give a complete overview. So keeping time in mind also. So Buddhism as a religion and philosophy emerged from the teachings of Buddha in India and spread to other parts of the world. Now, today in the 21st century, it is the fourth largest religion in the world with almost 520 million followers and most of the Buddhist population residing in Asia only. So Buddhism, if we look at Buddhism, then we find that Buddhism has various dimensions, right? It has a dimension of religion, it has dimension of spirituality, it has dimension of philosophy. But what makes Buddhism different in this 21st century is that it has gone much closer to the geopolitical field. Now coming to the next part, that is independent India and Buddhism. So in this section, basically I would like to point what are the major developments that took place in independent India in terms of Buddhism. So by the time when India got independence in 1947, so the great Buddhist heritage, its art and its culture and its literature were very known in the country. So in independent India basically adopted the Buddhist will of law, or what we call, or what is even known as Dhammachakra, and a Ashokan pillar as national symbol. So it is not that it is from the very beginning only that India's first Prime Minister, that is Jawaharlal Nehru, was also a great admirer of Buddhism, and his government decided that foreign policy of India will be based on Buddhist principles of Panchashil. So even we see that if we look at the Department of Buddhism of the Government of India, then it has adopted the basically Buddhist symbol as its logo, and the logo basically is of an elephant with lotus in his trunk, and this logo has been basically taken from the Ajanta caves. So apart from it, two major Buddhist events that took place which changed the domestic and international scene related to Buddhism is, first and foremost, is Dr. Ambedkar conversion to Buddhism, which basically affected the domestic politics. And the next one is the Dalai Lama shelter in India against Chinese aggression on Tibet, which affected the basically international politics. Now coming to next part, that what there are various reasons which because of which India has been using Buddhism as a soft power. So firstly, it is in Bodh Gaya that where Gautam Buddha attended enlightenment, and basically it is from India where only the Buddhism as a religion has emerged and it has spread to other parts of the world. Secondly, apart from enlightenment, various other important places are there in India which are directly related with Buddhism or Gautam Buddha, such as Sarnath is there, then Kushinagar is there, then Rajgir, Vaishali, Sanchi, etc. Is there, and also these places are also an important pilgrimage site to Buddhist followers, just like in any other region. So third point is that in ancient past, India had been the center of Buddhist studies, which attracted students, scholars from different parts of the world. So we had the Nalanda University and Taxila University. And fourthly, since 1950s, the India has been hosting Dalai Lama, which has branded India as a caretaker of Buddhism at international forum. So despite being faced criticism from China at various times. Finally, fifth point which I would like to point out here is that Buddhism basically has three branches, namely that is Mahayana is there, then there is Theravada is there, then other one is Vajrayana is there. So if we look at all three aspects, all three sects of the Buddhism, India has good relations with all these sects despite the differences in branches. Now India's engagement. Now first, next part is that what are India's engagement with Buddhism? So Buddhism is being applied as an essential soft power component of foreign policy strategy by many countries to achieve objectives of peace, cooperation, world brotherhood, and non-violence. So, but the basic, but the real interest, or what we can call as the basic interest of these countries, are to achieve advancement in their relations with neighboring countries by using their soft power skills. So India too is investing in Buddhism, and India's investment in Buddhism will be dealt under three subheadings. So first and foremost is through conferences in academia. Second one will be through tourism, and third one will be through PM Modi initiative. Now coming to the first part, that is through conferences in academia. So what we see that one of the way of using Buddhism as a soft power is through organizing Buddhist conferences and promoting Buddhist studies in India. So the modern what we see that the modern idea of Buddhist conference can be dated back to the idea of organizing Buddhist councils, and independent India has also continued this process. So this process of conferences. What we see that under the Prime Ministership of Jawaharlal Nehru, for the first time, India hosted the International Buddhist Conference in Sanchi, that is in 1952. So which was attended by almost 3,000 Buddhist nuns, monks, and historians. And at that point of time, this was one of the largest gatherings of Buddhist preachers and followers in the world. So continuing in the same process. So what India has done is that again in 2011 to commemorate the 2600 years of Buddha's enlightenment, Ashoka Mission with support from Public Diplomacy Division of Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India has organized again Buddhist Heritage Festival, which has been almost attended by 800 delegates from 46 different countries and observers from Buddhist organizations and institutions from around the world. Now, one of the major outcomes which have come out of this conference was in the form of International Buddhist Confederation. So, International Buddhist Confederation has been basically continuously enhancing its role in the global level by organizing various conferences. So, recently in 2021 also, it has organized 3 major conferences, which also included the celebration of Buddha Purnima Divas. Now, apart from the role of IBC, we have what India has been doing. That India has been organizing various Buddhist conferences through various different platforms, such as Samvad is there. Then there is International Buddhist Conclave is there, and another one is there, that is Indian Council for Cultural Relations is there. So basically, just I would like to highlight a few important, one of the most important aspects of Samvad conferences, that in the 6th edition of Samvad conferences, Government of India has proposed for the creation of library of all Buddhist literature and scriptures. Now, coming to the role of Indian Council for Cultural Relations, it has also been very actively engaging with the organizing of Buddhist-based conferences. So recently, again, ICCR has also organized a conference in February 2021, and it was basically done as Buddhist philosophy, International Conference on Buddhist Philosophy and its role in inculcating values among youth. So last year also, ICCR has also announced a scholarship for Mongolian students for the academic session 2020 and 21 in various subjects and degrees in India. Apart from it, another aspect of Buddhist soft power is, apart from conferences, is that of academia and Buddhist studies. So, as I have also already pointed out, that in the past India already had the Buddhist Study Center of Taxila and Nalanda University. So, in the modern period, also Nalanda University has been revived in Rajgir with support from various countries to develop a world-class research institution in the field of Buddhism. And Government of India has designated this institution as the institution of national importance. So the university is basically supported by various members of the East Asia Summit, and intergovernmental memorandums of understanding to that effect have been signed by almost 17 countries also. So it is not only that India has only for Buddhist studies, India has only Nalanda University in presence, but various other institutes are also there. For example, just I would like to take 3 or 4 names more. That is Central University of Tibetan Studies is there, which is located in Sarnath. Then Central Institute of Himalayan Studies is there, which is located in Arunachal Pradesh. Then Central Institute of Buddhist Studies is there, which is located in Leh. So basically, what these conferences and academia want to reflect is that establishment of universities with focus on Buddhist studies shows that India's way of respecting and promoting Buddhist culture. Now the second part, that is through tourism. So I would like to say that Buddhism and tourism are basically very closely related with each other. So in the sense that it would not be wrong to say that in the spread of Buddhism, tourism played a very important tourism has played a very important role. So, if you look at the time period, if you go back by history, then we find that Buddha himself traveled a lot to spread his teachings, and even one of the greatest admirer of Buddha was Ashoka, who has also traveled a lot in spread to doctrines of Buddha, and he has even sent missionaries across the world. So. So recently, the Government of India has also realized the potential of Buddhist tourism and has been making a great effort in this regard through various through major transnational project that is of building of a Buddhist circuit. So this basically Buddhist circuit is a combined initiative by the government of India, Ministry of Tourism, state government of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Several private sector businesses are also involved. Apart from it, Buddhist monasteries and the International Finance Corporation, which is an arm of World Bank, has also been involved. So all these players are basically involved in promoting in developing a Buddhist circuit. So recently last year only Kushinagar Airport has been got the international status, making it the 29th international airport in the country. So apart from it, then we have also involvement of Ministry of Railway. So Ministry of Railway through IRCTC is basically promoting Buddhist tourism by organizing a special train that is called the Mahaparinivan Express that covers major Buddhist sites in Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Nepal. And this train has been operational since 2007. So now coming to the next part, that is the last one, that is through PM Modi's initiative. So what we see that basically, if you look at the present scenario, then we find that basically the present in India, the present government has basically come up with a new foreign policy strategy that is called Panchamrit. So in Panchamrit, basically the fifth point talks about cultural linkage with other countries. Right. So Buddhism plays a very important role, and this has been a part of PM Modi's initiative. So what I will say that Buddhism as India's soft power got boost after PM Modi has become PM. So after Modi has become PM, as he has been very active in engaging with promoting Buddhism as India's soft power since from 2014 only. So as a strategy, he used mainly following approaches. First and foremost, whenever he used to visit a Buddhist, he used to visit a Buddhist station. Secondly, by paying offerings, prayers, gifts, and visiting Buddhist holy places. Thirdly, by giving grants to Buddhist station. Fourthly, by giving a scholarship for Buddhist studies in India. And lastly, participating in Buddhist conferences and cultural functions. So last year, when in his speech during the 24th session of United Nations General Assembly, Prime Minister Modi said, quote, "We belong to a country that has given the world not war but Buddha's message of peace," unquote. So Prime Minister Modi PM Modi basically through his Buddhist visits and addresses at different occasions gave the message to the world that India is the land of Buddha and cares about Buddhism and is active in spreading the Buddha message of love, peace, and fraternity. And by this, he basically wants to promote India's image as Buddhist soft power. So finally, in my conclusion part, so I would like to say that India is one of the most sacred places for all Buddhist followers of the world, and India has realized the importance of Buddhism to promote its soft power capacity. History reveals us that there has been close relationship with Buddhism and India since from the past only, and today in the 21st century, Buddhism is not only being viewed as from religious perspective, rather it has also evolved as a geopolitical tool, which forces modern nation states to use Buddhist diplomacy, and India is no exception to it. So the government of India under Prime Minister Modi has been trying to boost India's image as a protector and promoter of Buddhism and as a sacred place to Buddhist followers, investing in various academia-based policy to promote Buddhist studies, and also various infrastructure to attract Buddhist-based tourism. So lastly, what I want to say that in order to promote Buddhism as a soft power, India basically should focus on 4C, that is connectivity, consensus, care, and construction. So thank you. Sorry, Viktoria, you are mute.
Yes, thank you. I
Viktoria, you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. I have unmuted. So thank you, Mr. Raj, for your presentation. And now we have to go to the question session. We have just 3 questions, and I think after that we will finish. I see that we have 2 questions which addressed to myself. I will answer to them as about Russian soft power, and then we will go to the question to Dr. Lambert. Well, the question, what are the limitations and constraints of Moscow's soft power strategies in the global political context? Well, I think that first limitation is sources and even opportunities, I could say even financial opportunities, which Russia leaves for this soft power policy. And many of the projects and events which are created and conducted by some NGOs or institutions, educational institutions, they work thanks to some enthusiasts. And I think that if such limitation of this financial resource will stay, then it will live thanks to some enthusiasts. And also it is connected with this protracted process of reforms of Russian soft power institutions, which are Russian houses. There are some good changes, but I think still that we need time. And also there are such limitations as Russian language is not an international language, and it cannot become because it's not very easy for studying. And Russian culture is not definitely a pop culture. Of course, it has a pop culture dimension, but it's not so widespread and not so good, well understood as, for example, Hollywood or some British pop culture. And Russian culture is Russian, Russian speaking, and that is why it is most popular in post-Soviet space. And there is the second question. Second question is, how do you see the role of Russian film industry in strengthening soft power strategies in future? This question is very interesting, and I think that it is. It depends how Russia will revive and develop, because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we still had a period of, we could say, degradation Russian movie industry, but of course there were very strong filmmakers, and there were very famous films. There are still some famous products in the post-Soviet space, but usually when there are some cultural discussions in Russia, we see that people are quite skeptical about the level of the quality of those films which exist. But to be honest, I can say that now, maybe during recent 10 years, Russian filmmakers made some very good movies, and also there are some very good movies from 90s or 200 and millennium, at the beginning of millennium century. And there are still very strong schools which also come from the Soviet times, and probably it can make some success in future. But for the foreign audience, again, it can be to some extent not so well understood, although there are some attempts to go abroad. For example, even this year in 2021, one of Russian filmmakers made a movie in Russian, it is Devyataya, about Russian fighter, and soon in Europe and USA it is going to be also released as Escape from Hell. It is about the Second World War, and we will see how popular it is and if it works at all for the foreign audience. So now already we have two questions for Michael Lambert. I will announce the first now, and I will ask Michael to answer. So the question was about Russian soft power. So Russian public diplomacy is a quite unknown concept, not as in the US or European countries. So what do you think can Russia has a chance to become, if not the nation with the highest soft power index, maybe one taking a leading position in it?
Well, thanks a lot, first of all, for the question. I guess this question of index are not really full of sense, in my opinion, for the simple reason that soft power, and that the main aspect of it, it needs to target someone, or it needs to target a group of people or a specific country. So as such, for example, Russian soft power is already very active in states such as Abkhazia, for example, or even in Central Asia, while at the same time, it is not so active in Canada. So it's not about a whole index. You can be very efficient when it comes to your soft power in one specific country, and you can be very inefficient at the same time in another country. So in the future, I assume that Russian soft power, because it is mostly conservative as of today, will especially speak to nations such as China, eventually Bulgaria, and some more conservative state. So it definitely have a bright future when it comes to such state. While on the opposite side, and at the same time, simultaneously, it will probably decrease in Western European states, in the US, and also in Canada. So that's a very important part, and we need to remember that such index do not really make sense. It's depending on who you're targeting when it comes to soft power.
Thank you, Michael. There is also another question. What do you think about EU development policy as an instrument of soft power towards South Asia? Well, from Simon Party, doctoral candidate at University of Warsaw.
When it comes to Southern Asia, it's pretty tricky because it's depending also on which are the political interests. So when it's come, for example, to Russia versus, for example, American or Chinese interest, you also have states that are heavily instrumentalizing their relation with Russia or their relation with the US. So in the future, it's pretty difficult to assume exactly what is going to be Russian soft power. What is for sure is that the relation between China and Russia will increase, definitely, because they are the two strongest allies when it comes to share interest in this part of the world. However, when it comes to some other nations that are allied with the US or even with European partners, it might be more tricky because the position or taking side for Russia, or let's say having a positive image of Russia that is promoted, is usually not what they want. So that's important, once again, to remember that it will be very contrasted when it comes to Southern Asia. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. I also, there was some private question about, I could say, domestic Russian policy, and I can say that everything, just in general, everything that's going in countries concerning domestic policy, even if it's some scandals, conflicts, of course, they also influence image abroad and soft power of the country, and it's a normal process. Of course, people can lose some trust to authorities, no matter what, to Russia, to US leaders, to European leaders. So everything that happens concerning some opposition in Russia also, of course, influence. But again, it's a very, I could say, sensitive issue for even Russian society. So probably it's even more topic of this internal discussion of Russian people, which way Russia should go. So thanks everyone for their participation, for attention, and I hope that it was interesting to listen to very different topics and to get to know some very, I guess, new facts, and probably topics were non-trivial at all. So thank you everyone for your interest to this topic of soft power, and I also was happy to see you online, and hope that we will still have some opportunities to discuss more and to research more on our international relations topics. Thank you.
Chair, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, as we have come to the end of this session, we would like to express a sincere gratitude and thanks to the chair for agreeing to chair and moderate the session today. A sincere thanks also goes to all the speakers for being a part of the event and delivering such comprehensive and convincing presentations. We would like to acknowledge our gratitude to our friends from the diplomatic community, experts, academia, media, and different organizations. Finally, we must also mention our deep sense of appreciation for the audience who participated in the webinar and those who are watching us live. Thank you for your valuable time and attention and for making this session productive with your questions. Once again, we are truly honored to have you all with us today. Please do join us in the next session. Thank you so much.